Howdy, y'all. You know how I told y'all in one of the last videos that life can change in a moment and things might be different 2 months from now? Well, the other day I was looking at my natal chart and this rings true. So I was talking to my friend Jose. He's like, oh, look into it. And then I was talking to him and I'm like, I'm Mars and Aquarius. That's what he said. And I read it and I'm like, yeah. Well, that wasn't an influencer of what I'm going to say, but it just goes to show sometimes how stuff that's like that is accurate. And so, yeah, I do want to keep y'all on y'all's toes. But without further ado, I will reveal more about who I am in this video. It's going to be kind of like a tell-all. I decided to go ahead and, say it. I don't feel like I can be honest with my audience. And so there was a point where I had a friend who had done a podcast, or does them. And, oh, y'all might know who this is or whatever. I don't care. I'm not saying anything bad about him. But, and then I had another friend who was like, oh, maybe that's not a good idea to go on there if it's popular enough. If people are going to get offended by what you say. And I know that, people are like, oh, Michelle, say what you want to say this, but maybe it's better that I start off here instead of something bigger that may have had more attention. There are a lot less subscribers than you guys realize. I do get way more views than I do have subscribers. It's less than 10. It really is. It's not a lot, and I'm just saying that. But if I were to go there and for him to take me on to that, he would have had to have some questions lined up, and I would have had to have answered them. And so if I do a YouTube video or I do a podcast or I talk publicly or anything, I do want to have a basis for the story I'm going to tell you guys and what I'm going to reveal, what I'm going to say. And so I would want it to be well put together. Now, sometimes on YouTube videos I ramble a little bit, I realize that. But it was sort of unapparent to me what I was able to say on there and what I wasn't. It wasn't because of him, it was because of, just stuff. I just didn't know what I wanted to reveal and what I, didn't. About my story. So it was part of figuring out what to do with that. There wasn't really a plan in place. He's like, I'll be here and we'll do it. And I'm like, I don't know what to. And he goes, I want you to talk about coming to terms with your identity and how you did it or whatever. And I'm like, okay. And I was thinking, I don't necessarily want to throw names out there of who I got my information from all the time, because I just don't want to disturb the peace in that. And I don't know if you guys understand exactly what that means, but I just don't want to bring a bunch of people into it. Let's see. Now, without that, I don't know where I would be. Without people helping me, is what I'm trying to say as well. So you give and take a little bit. You're thankful for what you have, but on Instagram it was always easier to just be anonymous because people listen more. I was only 23, and people were like, well, what do you know? You're only 23. I was 22, 23, whatever. And so I don't think people honestly take it that seriously, and I do think that there was a slight form of jealousy in that, because I knew more so young than a lot of people have. Or they had the ability to, because there's advances and stuff, and people, they have records now and they are able to present that. But honestly, when you're an elder, you don't want to clip your youngins' wings. You don't want to do that. You want the next generation to be stronger than you, or to know more than you, or you want them to, that's what I think, to be able to speak their language when you couldn't, possibly, if that was your thing growing up and you learned it later on. You want them to be, born speaking, and to do it as babies, their first language instead of their second. Stuff like that. But no. If anybody was wondering what it was, you can message me, like the Instagram. But for that, if people figure out, I'm not tripping, they'll find it's me. Okay? There'll be a lot of people who come across that page who won't know who I am and may take it more seriously because there's no pictures on there. And I've had somebody say that, where they've been judgy because somebody has a certain amount of selfies or whatever. But yeah, I am related to, I think it's direct descendancy. I would have to go get the full records. They haven't been sent out to me quite yet, I don't think. But that's another thing. I'm moving, so I don't know where exactly my address will be, and I don't want to reveal it on here, the city I'm moving to. But I am the descendant, from what I gathered, was direct descendant of a woman named Juanita Villarreal. And so going into it, there was always, I don't know, a feeling that I didn't want to be placed incorrectly with a clan or anything. And plus, my mom was white. I'm not sure how Carrizo clans necessarily work, but my mom is fully white. We have the DNA test, we know she's fully white. And so I'm pretty sure that you have to be readopted. You know, I think that would be Turtle Clan, but not even Casa Grande Clan, because that comes from, well, my grandma's side, right? But her dad's mom, so great-great-grandma, her maiden name was Villarreal. And so Villarreal, that's where that comes from as well, for my one indigenous ancestor that he found on that. Now, there are more from what he's told me, but then again, you know, he's got a lot on his plate, he's busy, so I understand that too. Things take time, as I said in past videos. But yes, that is really who I am. And so what happened to her was that when she was 14, the Spanish killed her, both her parents. And I don't think there was any logs of siblings. They may have been older and off, married. You know, I guess sometimes you went with your other whenever you married. And so they killed her parents, they took her, and she became a servant wife. And what they do in, and he said that a lot, I don't know how to pronounce the name, it was Coahuila, not Willa, hang on, because there was only one out, so, Coahuila, I think that's how you say it, tribe. They did that in, Tamaulipas, Nuevo Leon, Nueva Santander. Whenever they had Native women and whenever they had kids, they weren't allowed to. There was a record that showed that she had like 3 kids, but they weren't allowed to say list their names, so it was very hard to trace back, which is very deliberate. You didn't want them to trace back to an indigenous woman. And so I guess he put the 2 and 2 together, that these kids were a part Native, and that the servant wife was one of my ancestors, or, you know, that's how that worked out. And then apparently they had 3 boys or something, and they're like, oh yeah, that's their mom, you know? And so that's how they got very aroused. So it must have been a long line of boys until you got, to my grandma, which would be my great-grandpa's mom on my paternal grandma's side. This is confusing, I'm sorry. But no, that was a common practice amongst those states in northern Mexico, where the Native women, they were taken as servant wives, and then they weren't allowed to name their mixed-race children. And I think that's very interesting, and it is coming from me that was information I put out for me, and that was my story to tell. And it goes back into that clan thing, you know, the wrong clan, or I feel like a lot of people rush to figure out how they're related to the chairman, which is very true. He is Carrizo. But, like, if you just did that, as I said, you wouldn't be able to tell, like, Juanita's story. You wouldn't be able to do that. And I think we talk about a lot about raping and about killing, which is what happened to her parents, of course. But we don't talk about the mental aspect of it. Like, not being able to name your children on your records, you know, to show that you were their mother. And they had to have said some shit to her, to where they probably taught her their language and then said some shit to her in their language when they knew she could understand it, about how nobody would talk about her. And I know that's true. I know that they were saying that shit to her, and it almost really worked, you know. And that's part of what, you know, pushed me to put this video out there, because you actually see the face of one of her descendants. And I'm not saying that other descendants can't talk about that, but it's probably not Mancius. It's me. You know, it's me this time. I had to have my time to shine. And you see, this is why it's so important to have your own, to recognize your own direct descendancy, because we can talk about chiefs all the time, and that's really cool. But what about these women's stories? You know, what about, you know, how the Spanish did that? You know, the mental aspect of it too, where they, you know, they're saying they'll never talk about you again. When their kids went off, you know, I don't know how exactly that worked. I'm still trying to get more information. It's really unclear about how these mixed race children live their lives afterwards. And of course, I'm almost positive they couldn't tell people who their mother actually was. So when they finally gave birth to children or grandchildren, you know, things were weird. And I'm trying to estimate dates. I'm sure he has the dates. I just don't want to bombard, you know, people with messages to figure out, you know, exact dates right now. But I mean, it's stuff in the making, and it comes with time, as I've always said. But this channel, it just gives me an opportunity to finally speak on it. Alright, and if y'all have any questions, y'all totally feel free to email me. I don't even know if I have that set up. I keep telling you guys that. Let's see. I guess I'm going to get it set up tonight. It should always be set up. I don't know how YouTube works. I just make videos, as I've said before. But anyway, y'all have a great night.